Your crime inspired, Hitchcocks wrote. This notorious crime of the century inspired countless films, stage plays, and novels, perhaps none more famous than the Patrick Hamilton 1929 play Rope and the Alfred Hitchcock film of the same name. Meyer Levin's 1957 novel Compulsion and the 1992 film Swoon were also apparently inspired by the murder, the latter of which, along with the films of Todd Haynes, began the new queer cinema movement in the United States. After being granted parole, Leopold moved to Puerto Rico. After the attack on Loeb, Leopold became a model prisoner. Already a supposed master of 15 languages, he made it his goal to learn another 12. He also volunteered in the prison hospital and helped reorganize a variety of projects for his cellmates. Then, in March 1958, after multiple failed attempts, Leopold was finally granted parole. He quickly fled to Puerto Rico, where he taught mathematics at the University of Puerto Rico and also published a book on ornithology called Checklist of Birds of Puerto Rico and the Virgin Islands. In 1961, he married a widowed American social worker named Trudy Feldman. He died in 1971 of a diabetes-related heart attack. Leopold graduated high school at 15 and was an avid ornithologist. Leopold graduated high school at 15 and was an avid ornithologist. Loeb started his criminal activities early on. Leopold's cohort and purported lover, Richard Loeb, was born in 1905 to an aristocratic lawyer and retired Sears Roebuck vice president. Loeb was the youngest graduate in the history of the University of Michigan, certainly as brilliant as his murderous counterpart. The only subject which seemed to pique his interest was a series of lurid detective novels. From a young age, Loeb proved himself an adept criminal, committing crimes like petty theft and orchestrating lies when his back was against the wall. From shoplifting to vandalism and, finally, arson, Loeb became more and more obsessed with the depths of depravity and crime. Leopold was born into wealth and considered a child prodigy. Nathaniel Freudenthal Leopold, that's right. His middle name was Freudenthal, was the progeny of a well-to-do immigrant family of German Jews who'd amassed a considerable fortune in the freight and transportation industries. Leopold was a self-described prodigy who claimed to have uttered his first word at just 4 months old. His IQ was reportedly scored at 210, though records from the time are sparse, and the test has since been considerably amended. His family even nicknamed him Babe, a stark contrast to the dark inner world that dominated his childhood fantasies. Loeb was murdered in prison by his cellmate. For some time after their convictions, the boys continued to receive money from their parents. Word soon spread among the other prisoners that the boys were flush with cash, resulting in multiple shakedowns, some of which ended in physical confrontations. Loeb had several problems with this. Not only could he no longer buy cigarettes, but his cellmate, James Day, had become accustomed to payoffs that would prevent him from hurting Loeb. When the money dried up, the attacks skyrocketed. On January 28, 1936, Day attacked Loeb with a straight razor in the prison showers. Loeb was rushed to a hospital and later pronounced dead. His last words to Leopold apparently were, "I think I'm going to make it." He was 30. Despite a 3-day closing argument from their attorney, the boys were convicted of murder. The boys both waived their right to a jury trial and decided that their fate, both verdict and sentencing, should be determined by a judge. Darrow convinced them to plead guilty, hoping that the ensuing psychiatric evidence introduced would be enough to display mitigating circumstances. As the trial came to a close, the boys were each convicted of murder, no surprise. At their sentencing, Darrow gave an impassioned speech, which lasted 3 days, eventually leaving the judge in tears. The judge happened to be an impassioned opponent of capital punishment and swore to himself that he would not let another murderer hang on his watch. As a result, Leopold and Loeb were spared the death penalty, and each were granted a life sentence plus 99 years for kidnapping and murder. Thanks to their rich parents, the boys were able to hire the defender of lost causes. With the evidence against them mounting quickly, it was clear that the boys' arrogant idea of escaping justice was not going to materialize. As such, their bewildered and rich parents decided to call in the big guns. They hired the now infamous defense attorney Clarence Darrow, known as the defender of lost causes, to come to the boys' aid. Both killers thought the idea was comical. Despite the mounting evidence, each still thought they would get off. On the day of the murder, they rented a car under the name Morton-D. Ballard. On the morning of the murder, May 21, 1924, the duo rented a car under the name Morton-D. Ballard. And while this name may seem quite ridiculous, Leopold had apparently used it numerous times before, the most recent time being just 3 weeks earlier. After fiddling with the license plates to obscure the numbers, they took a lazy drive through their wealthy enclave of Kenwood, hoping to stumble upon their target. It was Loeb who came up with the idea of committing the perfect crime. Once the boys' friendship blossomed, the exceedingly eccentric Loeb began inviting Leopold on a series of criminal escapades, throwing bricks through windows and committing other semi-violent acts. In return, he promised Leopold a slew of sexual favors. After a time, Loeb presented his final fantasy, committing the perfect crime. It wasn't enough to commit these acts for the violent thrill. No, Loeb wanted to be famous. He wanted to commit a crime that newspapers would print and that his family and friends would talk about over breakfast. They planned to attack Loeb's cousin and requested a ransom of 0. After much debate, Loeb settled on attacking Bobby Franks, an unassuming young cousin on his mother's side of the family, as their victim. They spent night after night planning the attack, settling on a 0 ransom and an odd, yet apparently foolproof, method of collecting it. In their ransom note to Franksy's father, they instructed him to bring a package containing the cash on a train traveling south of Chicago on the tracks to Lake Michigan's west side. As the train trundled by, Franksy's father was told to chuck the package from the window to the boys, who would be waiting below in their vehicle. Once the money hit the grass, they'd nab it and make their getaway. Or so they'd planned. Leopold accidentally left his glasses at the scene, ruining their perfect crime. Unbeknownst to Leopold and Loeb, Jacob Franks had already been in contact with the authorities. Despite the fact that the pair had burned Franksy's face and genitals with acid so that authorities would have trouble determining his identity, the boy's body had been found by a day laborer and eyed before the ransom was ever slipped into Jacob Franksy's mailbox. To further spoil their perfect crime, police also found Leopold's distinct pair of eyeglasses near Frank's body and traced them back to his home. The authorities promptly brought the boys in for questioning, and their loyalty to one another soon faded away.
Leopold and Loeb murdered Bobby Franks with a chisel.
After a long day of driving around, the soon-to-be murderous pair were worried that they might not find their chosen victim, Loeb's 14-year-old cousin. But during the 5 o'clock hour, they finally came upon the naive and sorely unprepared Bobby Franks, offering to give the boy a ride. When he refused, Loeb lied, "I want to talk to you about the tennis racket you had yesterday. I want to get one for my brother." The boy's curiosity tragically got the better of him. Climbing into the vehicle, he was immediately struck not once, not twice, but 4 times over the head with a chisel, with the last blow sending a pool of blood all over Loeb's trousers. The boys quickly hid Frank's lifeless body under blankets in the back. They disposed of his corpse in a culvert near Wolf Lake and mailed the ransom letter they'd crafted to Frank's father, Jacob.
Hey guys, thank you so much for the support and likes and comments down below, and also thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to see you in the next video. Then take care, bye.